But
Okay.
great. Peace. Welcome back to Rise of the Moors. I feel like no one could hate on that name. Like literally, if you're hating on it, you're hating on your own success. Right? I think that's fun. I also think it's funny because you're casting a spell every time you say it. But anyway, we read it every meeting. Caveat emptor, my personal favorite. Why? Because Moors are men, upright, independent, and fearless, who care for their loved ones and follow the prophet to a destiny which is not certain nor unknown. They are fortified by the impregnable doctrine built upon love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Peace. It is therefore folly at its greatest height for smelly culprits with their insidious plans to invade such a realm. They try and try, but their own bad planning brings down wrath upon their heads like the sword old Damocles had. Intrigue and scurriest cunnings on a difficult path to travel in the ranks of the Moors. This is so because the Moorish movement has been well planned by Prophet Noble, whose latent powers are abundant, unknown, and may be called into action as a matter of defense at any moment. Prophet Noble knows the people within his ranks who are interested. They're the vanguard of the movement as the Moorish hordes increase here in America. All of the Moors are active, not passive. A member's interest can only be in one direction. And having traveled over the roads years before, the prophet knows where every member is along the road. A few feet below is another road where schemers work, where traitors grin, and culprits bask in the sun. They think they are on the same road with true Moors, but the Moors are high above on a pinnacle where they might beat the destructionists as they fall for their last time, and their bones bleach in the sultry midday sun. Hungry scavengers flying high, catch scent, devour, and leave crying out, "Carry our emptor!" Cast out the dead carcass. The Moors, high above these plotters, purveyors, the worst that exists, hurl themselves downward by their own works. That's just so true. That is so true. I wish I could name all the Moors that catch scent of this Moor science. They think they're the master of it real quick. Then they fail. They're like, wait, what you want? What you? How come you? I think it's funny.
He said, "Oh, you think this is
Yeah. And then the Moors that, they still call themselves black, but they want to be around Moors as if that's going to give them something. They want to come to the temple sometimes.
I can't stress out how important.
First was the word. Jurisdiction.
And it wasn't black.
To proclaim that every meeting, Islam. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth, the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now sit there and found out from government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens. They're working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so that they may take charge of the situation. Now, what did we just talk about off camera?
Can't say.
Exactly. Is that not what he just said?
Mm-hmm.
Word for word. That this is the only thing. Oh, Jamal's crazy. You know what he's talking about? Oh, we're going to do this now. Come on, it's crazy. I've notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. Why? Because all these naysayers are all in the public eye, basking in the sun, telling people, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. And since our people are just waking up and they need direction, the loudest person is going to get all the attention. So since the prophet was humble and like, well, this is the real salvation, but I'm not about all that extra stuff. Those who do support me, please give me finance. Because those people who are loud and boisterous, the followers that are following them and not getting any real direction, they're giving them finance. I can tell you some stories off camera about how much finance these people are getting behind those doors. And acting as if this isn't about the finance. Anyway, so realize that, if you see Moors doing good, you know they're doing good, not just because you believe it and they say they're doing good. By their words, works, and deeds. As an example, here at Rise of the Moors, there's at least 3 Moors here that got cases dismissed. So we don't just say, well, in theory, this stuff works. No, we say, oh, look at these records. Look what we said. Look at what they did. Cause and effect. Proof. Other Moors are just saying, well, do this, and then that's going to happen. And you say, well, show it to me. Then you say, prove it to me. And they say, well, prove that it didn't. Well, you're the claimant. The accuser bears the burden of proof. If you're claiming that this works, prove it. But they don't want to do that. Because then that exposes them. And then the Moors that they had following them, some of them with good hearts, will no longer follow them because they see them for the frauds that they really are. So, if you see Moors doing good, support them. I need finance and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the past few years, Prophet Noble Brali. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, this is the instructions from your prophet, Noble Brali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. One of those creeds is don't publicly shame your brother or sister. I think that should be rule number 1. Mine. Anyway, Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is on now, but the weak can comprehend it not. Weak-minded. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Brali. And that is why many hearts have been turned to stone, and many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear, least they would be confounded of their sins. Now we really need to pay attention to that. Because there's a reason why Moors don't want to deal with certain subject matter, because they're incompetent and they don't want to admit it. Or they've been lying to the people for years and they don't want to admit it. Or they're agents and they don't want to admit it. So that's something that they would have to confront themselves with. Not only themselves, but the people. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving. And they're trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. Now remember, when you read the counterintelligence program of the FBI, one of their tactics was to cause confusion. Cause confusion, discredit people based on old stuff, or fabricated things, falsely arrest people, murder them, plant drugs on them, get them to do things to little boys and girls, get them in crazy orgy parties and take a bunch of pictures. That's what they do.
The black one.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We was hanging out in front of the building, when we were right across the street from the church. And I was dozed off in the chair outside. It was not able to listen. And I woke up feeling scattered. What was going on? Dope one started to see what happened. Maybe. Who's the? I ain't worried about that. I'm like, Who's this? No, it's not. Wow.
But if you have the true love of Allah, in the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your profit. So remember, the democracy is part of the Spanish Inquisition waged against the Moors. Their main tool is fear. As an example, please. What they did to Sharon Tracy Gale Bay, they unlawfully took her and her children out of her house, which is genocide, put her on the news as if she was some criminal, to scare those with weak minds, to divert them away from more science. So we see that and say, well, I don't want that to happen to me, so I don't want to deal with none of that. But it's just a scare tactic. Comprehend that, right? Just because something bad happens doesn't mean you're not a Moor anymore. As an example, if a Japanese person gets locked up, that doesn't mean they're not Japanese anymore. If a Korean person is in adversity, that doesn't mean they're not Korean anymore. So any Moor are going through any hard situation, and then they get out of it and say, I'm not a Moor no more. Well, dear me. Idiot, coward, and dirty. Watch your enemies there, Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. So anyone saying, why you got white tassels on? They're an enemy. Anyone saying, why is that female Moor wearing a feather? They're an enemy. Anyone saying, you're not a real Moor, let's go to the temple? They're an enemy. Anyone saying the prophet never taught that and have no proof, they're an enemy.
Never taught civics.
Especially any Moor saying the prophet never taught civics, when the Moorish Holy Temple of Science was a civic organization before it adopted the religious affidavit. They're an enemy. Anyone saying, just pay your mortgage, you won't have to deal with a foreclosure, they're an enemy. Anyone saying, well, that's squatting, when we say adverse possession, they're an enemy. Anyone saying, don't listen to that Tar Street Bay stuff, you're going to end up in Guantanamo Bay, they're an enemy.
I was trying to send you Sharon when she went through what she went through.
Anyone saying, we're not going to bring you to the Adab chamber because you know Tar Street Bay, they're an enemy. Word for word, that's what they said.
You gotta understand, everything legal is lawful.
Yeah.
Everything lawful is legal. So, they want to use legal terms to be able to incarcerate us and put us in a movie and against our will, put us in the gun for her coercion that we don't want to be in there because we don't harm nobody. And they gotta understand that the only thing that they could be able to go in the capacity, the way they can conduct, to be able to address the situation is in the equity law, not to be able to use it as a criminal activity because you cannot be able to, you're not a subject of no entity that's reporting. We human beings, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
They don't understand that.
of course not. Well, a lot of them do understand. But they're doing
The magistrate who's sitting on the bench.
No, some of these policy enforcers, like as an example, the guy on the video with Sharon, he knew exactly what the hell they were doing. They're inquisitionists. They know exactly what they're doing. They are inquisitionists. It's not white supremacy. So all that white supremacy stuff that we thought they were doing knowingly, it's the Inquisition knowingly. It's genocide knowingly. Deliberately, not by accident. Right? Because if you're part of any law organization, any law firm, any so-called law enforcement, any so-called government entity, you are bound to know law. Meaning, if you're a painter and you run a paint company, you might want to know how to paint. You have to know how to paint. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a chief of police, you have to know law. If you're a mayor, you have to know law. If you're a city councilman, you have to know law. If you're an attorney, you have to know law. If you're a prosecutor, you have to know law. If you're a judge, you have to know law. If you're the president, you have to know law. So don't excuse these people. They know exactly what they're doing. And if they don't, or politely inform them of what they're doing via lawsuit. You know what I'm saying? Please say it.
Cannot.
Why?
Not for the family.
Is it too binary?
Yes.
Write it down. I want to see.
He can't help it.
I can't. I love it. So, a lot of them know exactly what they're doing. Them knowing what they're doing, they know we don't know how to counteract them. Because we think, well, if we just get stuck in our higher self, everything will be fine because this is a spiritual battle, not a physical one. Even though they're taking our physical bodies. Right? So these, sidebar. Yes, any person claiming to be any type of organization within the Moorish nation bound to know law. And if they don't, they should be removed from that position. But the people have to be competent enough to know that those people don't know what they're talking about, and that they force them to step down.
The lookout was crazy. That's the funny thing.
Because we're all crazy. What are we doing?
I've been doing it for so long, they just think that, like,
We support their own people.
Oh, another thing.
I mean, that's
Somewhat, that's not,
Another thing.
my major problem.
Another thing too is that I would like to get I had a little traffic court that I had to go into. I'm trying to talk to the magistrate on the chamber that they brought me to the room, and I'm like, it's pretty much in the same scenario about knowing law. I told them the chief of police, and I talked to the magistrate of the court, and I told him, I was like, I'm standing alone, I'm common law, I'm saying? I have the right to travel, and I rehearsed all my constitutional rights and stuff like that. The chief of police automatically didn't say nothing. He knew that I was in my right standards, and that I was standing common law. But the magistrate didn't want to have it. She called the guards right away. She was trying to escort me out. She didn't want to hear it. She told me, you have to pay it. And I told him, I'm not going to pay because the Third Reserve Act 1913 all the way to ratified in 1933. I'm not paying nothing. You guys take the gold until, you know what I'm saying? Even you guys' Constitution, Massachusetts Constitution, you guys computerize everything by itself. So I'm not paying nothing. She's like, oh, you
I wish you could be in the court with him sometime. Let me know next time you go. I want to be there. I'll get it back to my popcorn.
Wait, you didn't know one time of thing?
No, I get you.
The one in situations where phones are allowed in the courtroom, you're allowed to have your phone in your lap, in your hand, everything in the court while the administrator is doing whatever it is she's doing. And after he said something, the securities make everyone put it on.
Of course.
That blows my mind when things like that.
Nah, it ruins their
I
game.
know, but it's like, am I the only one who
That
sees
sees
that thing?
it?
Are we rushing it now? Or should we?
The thing is, I see, like, my experience, like, you have to be able to be in there to be able to feel the vibes.
Yeah.
Now, let me just, right, a lot of these Moors claiming, I'm the supreme, I'm the this, I'm the that, they've never been to court.
Yeah, you have to be, because it's like playing chess. Automatically, you're attacking the king and the queen at the same time. They don't want to be able to confront the magistrate who's sitting on the bench because there's no out of the court.
And once you challenge the one in charge, the whole game is done.
The whole game is done.
The whole thing is over.
So that's why they make you to be able to fill a contract against your will. And then you have to understand, you're the general secretary for all CAP's name, so you cannot be able to engage in a contract. You have to be able to automatically bypass that without contract because it's violating your Fourth and your Fifth Amendment of privacy. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time, you, the majority of the people, they have to understand you, the majority, not the minor, infant, to be able to afford your own affairs. And that's what you're trying to do.
So,
that's
now,
how you're right.
all of that energy that you're putting into the state level courts, are you continuing to go there and challenge jurisdiction over and over and over again? They're saying, well, you challenge jurisdiction, we never proved it, but you still keep showing up. You're incompetent. So you have to take it to federal court and sue them. Just like they're trying to sue you, take them to federal court as a plaintiff and sue them. Then you're the secured party creditor. Why? You're the secured party because you're making claims. So if you're making a claim, that means you have the right to remedy, which means someone owes you money. So they're the debtor.
That's what they do. Right.
Which that's the bond. Right? So if I say, all right, Juju slapped me in the face, that's an assault. Right? Since she hurt me physically, that's a tort claim. She owes me $5,000. I claimed that she hit me. Now I'm demanding remedy of $5,000, which since I put that on the record, that's the bond. Now they have to indict her. So you're
My hand hurts. Can I be the injured party?
well, now we have to bring that to court and you have to count the claim. Well, his face was too hard, so I'm suing him. You know what I'm saying? Then we would argue there instead of me going to all the more saying, she slapped me, it hurt really bad, I'm gonna sue her. No, go straight to court. Everything that you're complaining about, stop complaining and make claims in court.
I have a question, right? Again, back to the same thing with the claim and all that. So I asked the magistrate, I put a list together because I would like to be able to be prepared. I don't like to be sound competent when I'm speaking to these individuals. Not your opinions, however you want to call it, because they cause of harm, induce your opportunities. So you got countership in 1642 and got incorporated as a city after 1871, 1889. I'm Middlesex County. And I know this. So, I don't feel incompetent what's going on. It's called the Art of Liberation Party. So I told them that I asked the magistrate, because I don't want to call him a judge, not a judge. I was like, this is Article 3 court, this is Article 3 judge. He said to me, this is a traffic court. And everybody looked crazy. Everybody shut down. And then I asked him again, are you an Article 3 judge? He just stumbled a little bit and put his mouth right. He put his hand in his mouth. And he said, but are you a judge? And he said, yeah. So he's trying to avoid the question no matter what. And automatically he asked me, you got what you wanted, right? You already got the way, feet, and everything. So you're all set, right? All right.
Trying to get you out of there.
Yeah, trying to get me out of there. But I do want that recorded. And then what they want you to do is they want you to sign it into a business account and contract to be able to get to be able to get the minutes. And I'm asking everybody to give me the minutes of the hearing. It's supposed to be public. It's supposed to be public.
No. He told you. This is traffic court. Traffic is what? Commerce. What you complaining about? He told you. This is commerce. So you gotta pay. It's commerce. You gotta pay. He told you. He's like, this is traffic court. So that's what we have to understand. It's not what we think it is. He told you. Traffic court. Lexo Dictionary, what is traffic? It'll say you. Commerce. Period.
So we should have we were glad to pay the note for
Hell yeah. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's chess. You gotta pay that little 20 notes to expose them. It's bigger than you paying the 20 notes. Expose the hell out of them. Them stumbling.
Don't take
one
one
in court, they stumble. Oh, sliding like
What? That's why I was like, say anything else, but don't say anything else.
Oh, my bad. That's how much documents goes from Congress.
Yeah, because they don't want you to have that so you can expose them. So that's when we have to start bringing in our stuff so we can get that on our own public record.
Minutes with the administrative honoring and competence.
All right, let me finish this. Where was I? Watch your enemies, they're always talking shit. In other words, that's what they do. Act accordingly and Allah will bless you for your good work and peace. Prophet 1 or Muslims read every day. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. Work for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans and causing confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be severe consequences. Work for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Every single one of you is the law. So when we get violated and then we don't do anything, that's justice deciding to not take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. Now, we just talked about on camera. What was that person doing? Just that, violating these things. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. Any questions on that? Are we sure?
Sounds clear.
So any more saying Moors aren't citizens? When the prophet called us American citizens, what does that tell you about them?
Maybe they just haven't studied.
What if they're claiming to be let's say, a Grand Chief? What if they say that as a Grand Chief?
And they're not a Grand Chief.
I'll read that one more time. All true Moors will and must obey the law. I don't say beliefs. I don't say opinions.
Belief is a definition when you break it down. Belief is a lie.
Will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. They lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their car and buttons, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the statewide prophet boundary. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet. No would dwell if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet therefore sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from the simple ways of peace. Prophet no would dwell. So I want to take away from this good conversation that we were talking about, but the topic for today is Dred Scott. Who here is familiar with the Dred Scott decision? Dred Scott versus Stanford. I'll read it. This is from Wikipedia. Dred Scott versus Stanford was a landmark decision of the United States Supreme Court in which the court held that the U.S. Constitution was not meant to include citizenship for Black people, regardless of whether they were enslaved or free, and therefore the rights and privileges it confers upon American citizens would never apply to them. The plaintiff in this case was Dred Scott, an enslaved Black man whose owners had taken him from Missouri, which was a slave-holding state, into the Missouri Territory, most of which had been designated free by the Missouri Compromise of 1820. When his owners later brought him back to Missouri, Scott sued in court for his freedom, claiming that because he had been taken to free U.S. territory, he had automatically been freed and was legally no longer a slave. Scott sued first in Missouri State Court, which ruled that he was still a slave under its law. He then sued in U.S. federal court, which ruled against him by deciding that it had to apply Missouri law to the case. He then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. So, one, they said slaves don't know how to read. How is a slave suing anyone? How does he know law? How can they never talk about that? How does this so-called Black man who don't know how to read suing anybody if you don't know law? Then when you go to caselaw.finelaw.com,
I just dropped the link in the chat.
if you look it up, it'll say plaintiff in error, which means he was wrong. You can't agree to be someone's property, then take on his last name, then denationalize yourself, and then claim that you have rights. Right? Then they try to tell you, actually, let me read this first. The laws that they were talking about, Missouri state law, was the Christian Black Codes, which applies to European property, known as Negroes, Blacks, Coloreds, and Indians. That's Christian Black property. Because since their masters are citizens of the state, they're citizens of the state, but not really citizens, subjects, which is under the citizens, because they're agreed to be property by claiming someone else's name, claiming someone else's religion, and just disrespecting their forefathers by claiming to be a crown. Right? So if you don't know what the Christian Black Codes are, they were regulations between slaves and colonists, also known as the Codes Noir or slave codes, based largely on that compiled in 1685 for the French Caribbean colonies. It was introduced in 1724 and remained in force until the United States took possession of Louisiana, in 1803. The code's articles regulated the status of slaves and free blacks. Which means what? There's no difference. It regulates the slaves and the free blacks. What's the difference? If the same laws apply to you, what's the difference? That means the word free in front of the adjective black don't mean nothing.
Because it's still black as a subject, right?
Exactly. As well as relations between masters and slaves. And then when you go to work and you call your boss a boss, what does boss mean? Master. What does employer mean? Master. What does employee mean? Subject. So what's the difference? So here's some of the black codes. Number 1, decrees the expulsion of Jews from the colony. Now, who was the Inquisition against? The Moors and the so-called Jews. Makes it imperative on masters to impart religious instructions on their slaves.
That's great.
Now, what did the conquistadors do when they came here? They enforced what on the indigenous people? Christianity. Wasn't the Spanish Inquisition initiated by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand? Isn't there a Santa Isabella in so-called Puerto Rico?
Yeah.
Doesn't that mean Saint Isabel? Oh. So, wouldn't that mean so-called Puerto Ricans, that this applies to them, right? Oh. Permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic creed only. Now, isn't there a war in Islam? Don't they promote Christianity? Wasn't Christianity started in 325 AD, known as the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, which is a Roman creed, which was created by the Constantine, Emperor Constantine, the Roman Emperor? Oh. Every other mode of worship is prohibited. Number 4, Negroes placed under the direction or supervision of any other person than a Catholic are liable to confiscation. Now, are all of our leaders so-called Christians? Sundays and holidays are to be strictly observed. All Negroes found at work on these days are to be confiscated. Now, don't our grandma be taking us to church every Sunday? Sometimes every day of the week? We forbid our white subjects of both sexes to marry with blacks under the penalty of being fined and subjected to some other arbitrary punishment. We forbid all curates, priests, or missionaries of our secular or regular clergy, and even our chaplains in our Navy to sanction such marriages. That should be what? A license, which is what? Permission. We also forbid all our white subjects, and even the manumitted or freeborn blacks, to live in a state of concubinage with blacks. Should there be any issue from this kind of intercourse, it is it is our will that the person so offending and the master of the slaves should pay each a fine of 300 livres.
So, because they forbid any whites to be in a state of concubinage.
Yep. The master has to pay. Should said issue be the result of the concubinage of the master with the slave, said master shall only pay the fine, but be deprived of the slave and of the children, who shall be adjudged to the hospital of the locality, and said slave shall forever incapable of being set free. But should this illicit intercourse have a distance between a free black and his slave, then said free black and no legitimate wife, and should, when said free black and no legitimate wife, and should said black marry said slave according to the forms prescribed by the church, which in order to get married in the church, you need what? A license. So what's the difference?
It's just a contract.
Said slave shall be thereby set free, and the children shall also become free and legitimate. And in such a case, there shall be no application of the penalties mentioned in the present article. What is that? 7. The ceremonies and forms prescribed by the ordinance of Leos and by the edict of 1639 for marriages shall be observed both with regarding to free persons and to slaves. But the constant consent of the father and mother of the slave is not necessary. That of the master shall be the only one required. Now, most of our people don't ask the parents for their hand in marriage. They get permission from the state via the what? License. So what's the difference? The state is acting as the master. So what's the difference? Nothing. Number 8. We forbid all curates to proceed to effect marriages between slaves without proof of the consent of their masters. They won't even do the ceremony like he has a marriage license. So again, what's the difference? And we also forbid all masters to force their slaves into any marriage against their will. Number 9. Children issued from the marriage of slaves shall follow the condition of their parents. They shall belong to the master of the wife and not of the husband, if the husband and wife have different masters. If the husband be a slave and the wife be a free woman, it is our will that their children, of whatever sex they may be, shall share the same condition of their mother and be as free as she, notwithstanding the servitude of their father. And if the father be free and the mother a slave, the children shall be the slaves. Excuse me, the children shall all be slaves. Number 11. Masters shall have their Christian slaves buried in consecrated ground. 12. We forbid slaves to carry offensive weapons or heavy sticks under the penalty of being whipped and of having said weapons confiscated for the benefit of the person seizing them. Now, most of our people get charged with weapon charges, right? But the Constitution says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. But that don't apply to black slaves, because they're under the Negro laws, which says they can. We start to see how this shit is applied today. They're just calling it, instead of saying bearing arms, oh, you have a weapon. The Constitution says bear arms. A weapon is something else. Blacks can't have weapons. And what they try to do when they took you to court, they try to say, you have a dangerous weapon and blah, blah, blah. They try to treat you like you're a Negro. And what'd you say?
I'm talking about.
They try to enforce the Negro laws on you. Exception is made in favor of those slaves who are sent a hunting or a shooting by their masters, and who carry with them a written permission to that effect, called a what? License. Look up the definition of license, it'll say permission. Look up the definition of permit, it'll say what? Permission. Permit. Permission. No difference. Or are designated by some known mark or badge. So if you're a cop, you don't need a license. And they got so-called Negroes as cops. They don't need a license. They're just telling other Negroes, so-called blacks, that you need a license. Because they work for the master. Who's a so-called state, which the head of the state is European.
I guarantee they still make the Negro policy.
In private,
Yeah,
in private,
because
to
they're
carry in private.
Yeah, because they're the officers. They're civilians acting like officers. They're just policy enforcers.
They're mercenaries.
That's something that we're going to find out more.
13. We forbid slaves belonging to different masters to gather in crowds, either by day or by night, under the pretext of a wedding or for any other cause, either at the dwelling or on the grounds of one of their masters or elsewhere, and much less on the highways or in secluded places, under the penalty of corporal punishment, which shall not be less than the whip. In case of frequent offenses of the kind, the offenders shall be branded with the mark of the flower de luce, and should there be aggravating circumstances, Capital punishment may be applied at the discretion of our judges. We command all our subjects, be they officers or not, to seize all such offenders to the arrest and conduct them to prison, although there should be no judgment against them. Just lock them up.
It's just like that little period where fights still going on where I was seeing a bunch of posting people just calling policy enforcers on blacks, so-called blacks all the time. So, oh, they're barbecuing over there.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're not allowed to be in numbers. It's like Providence Place Mall. There was a point in time where you couldn't be 3 so-called black people wearing the same color in the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was considered a gang. Yeah, at the mall, you couldn't do it. You kicked out. Black codes.
I wish they would,
14. Masters who shall be convicted of having permitted or tolerated such gatherings as aforesaid, composed of other slaves than their own, shall be sentenced individually to indemnify their neighbors for the damages occasioned by such gatherings, and to pay for the first time a fine of 30 livres, and double that sum on the repetition of the offense. 15. We forbid Negroes to sell any commodities, provisions, or product of any kind without the written permission of their masters, called what? A business license. City Hall. That makes sense. Nope. But your permit.
On top of that, you have to be able to pay taxes for that city.
Right. Or without wearing their known marks or badges. And any persons purchasing anything from Negroes in violence of this article shall be sentenced to pay a fine of 1,500 livres. So we think black-owned business get a license from the European. Oh, you thought you own something. That's funny.
Labor is the definition of what? Both?
I'm not sure. Look it up. Libres. Livres. Then it says 16, 17, 18, 19 provide length for the clothing of slaves and for their substance. (20) Slaves who shall not be properly fed, clad, and provided for by their masters may give information thereof to the Attorney General of the Superior Council, or to all the other officers of justice of an inferior jurisdiction, and may put the written exposition of their wrongs into their hands, upon which information, and even ex officio, should the information come from another quarter, the Attorney General shall prosecute said masters without charge any cost to the complaint. It is our will that this regulation be observed in all accusations for crimes or barbarous and inhumane treatment brought by slaves against their masters. Now, this is where they pose that so-called black people can sue for civil rights violations. To keep us calm, we ain't black. To keep the masters calm. Like, oh, you can at least sue for this. The master can't treat you too bad. Or just bad enough to keep you submissive. Yeah, but that's a problem. Because you're an citizen. And you cannot show me one black person who has sued pro se, one, without paying any fines. They have to be an attorney. Or have an attorney speak to them. Blacks can't represent themselves because they can't even present themselves. Because they're controlled by this, not their own free will. Their masters will this, not them.
On top of that, they force you
All right. 21. Slaves who are disabled from working, either by old age, disease, or otherwise, be the disease incurable or not, shall be fed and provided for by their masters. And in case they should have been abandoned by said masters, Said slaves shall be adjudged to the nearest hospital, to which said master shall be obligated to pay 8 cents a day for the food and maintenance of each one of these slaves. And for the payment of this sum, said hospital shall have a lien on the plantations of the masters.
That's why.
Now, here's the thing that most people don't know about. I was hospitalized for a few days. They tried to say I owe them $22,000. Said no one's paying that. I'm not paying that. I don't want to do it. Right? I never paid it. No one paid it. There's nothing to pay. Right. You know what I'm saying? So anyone going in for care, public hospitals can't turn them away. By law. Because they have an interest in keeping our people alive for slave labor. So when they say the hospital should have a lien on the master, that's an interest. I took care of your slaves, keep this hospital running.
From a person that works in a hospital, there's actually a SKU they can put in to take care of it. And they talk about it like people that don't have insurance and don't want to pay and have no money and won't identify themselves. There's something to put in so that the state pays for it. So that's the master paying for the slave.
Any questions on that? What's the difference? 22. So remember, slaves can't enter into any businesses unless they get written permission, right? Which is a business license, right? Mm-hmm. 22. We declare that slaves can have no right to any kind of property, and that all that they acquire, either by their own industry or by the liberality of others, or by any other means or title, whatever, shall be the full property of their masters. Any questions on that? This is where the birth certificate comes into play, which is a transmitting utility. So they're transmitting ownership based on your labor to them since they created that instrument. So if I say, this piece of paper is known as John Smith, I kill you, take your son and call him John Smith, everything that he does in this name is really mine because I created it. So even if he wants to come to me and authenticate it, yeah, I certify that this is a true copy. I still own it. Go ahead and keep working in that name to keep giving me that energy.
That's cool, brother.
No, it's not. They're telling you. They told you. They told you this is what we're doing. Right? And since I created that piece of paper with that name on it, I control that. I have your son thinking he's it. It don't matter if he authenticates this or not, because he has to come to me to get it authenticated. And when these people authenticate the birth certificate, who do they go to? The state. Who's the what? Issuing keyword authority, which means what? They own it. And in the book of Revelations, what they tell you? No one will be able to buy and sell unless they have the name, all caps, or the number of Social Security, mark of the beast. The name or the number associated with that name, that's the mark of the beast.
Even on the Social Security, it tells you they have to write it on the user. They have to write for the sender.
Authorized. Who? The creator. Not your mom, the person who created the instrument. Right. Additionally, and the children of said slaves, their fathers and mothers, their kindred or other relations, either free or slaves, shall have no pretensions or claim thereto, either through testamentary dispositions or donations. Meaning, you can't even inherit it like own business. You can't pass that on. You don't own that. That's why all of our stuff goes where? Probate, which is European courts, where they verify wills. Right? So if I call this guy John Smith, kill you, your son now thinks he's John Smith, he owns a business in this name, he can't pass it down to his children unless he comes to me, which is probate, and I verify that will. To make sure it's along with my will. To make sure my family continues to own this by your son paying taxes. Always gives me a cut. Yeah. That's why people say put your stuff in trust. Because if you write something in your free national name and say, my will be done, period, meaning there's nothing left, and you sign it, what's there to verify? But since these people are effing incompetent, They have to verify. You know what I'm saying? Status. They're telling you can't own nothing. And you can't pass it down to your children. So black-owned business, what are you talking about? Your master owns that. That's why you pay him. That's why you go to him for EIN. That's why you pay taxes to him.
You know what makes sense to me? Now I see why they put forward that first black congressman there. First black only gets him elected to vote. Because if they're rather than Christian like code is true.
They don't own it. The so-called black person don't own it. That's why when you research the NAACP, it says in their charter, you can't own property. So how they advance the so-called color people? You can't own nothing.
I went to that in Massachusetts. That's why Massachusetts general law too. They have to be able to keep property and follow the courts of the state. They could be able to do it.
Probate. Let me read that one more time, just in case anyone's confused. Remember, this is the Christian black codes. Europeans are controlling their Moorish property, bringing blacks, Indians, colored, Latinos, etc., Hispanics, all that BS. We declare that slaves can have no right to any kind of property, and that all they acquire either by their own industry, meaning you work for it, or by the liberality of others, meaning you made an incorporated LLC, you go to them, you think everything's good, you got an incorporation because they gave you permission, right? Or by any means or title whatsoever, maybe you think you got a mortgage so you own something, or you think you got Indian title even though it's held in trust by the United States for the Indians, right? Shall be the full property of their masters. And when you read Indian title, it says ceded lands, meaning the Indians gave it to the Europeans. And when you read mortgage, it says it's not ownership, it's a lien. Then when you read deed of trust, a deed is just an action. The trust was created. You signed the contract saying you would pay him. And if you don't, they get your estate. Deed of trust ain't ownership.
They've been known that since day one. We've seen that all the way from the Indians of America, whatever they want to call it. You know what I'm saying? You just see the reservation of the Indians, and they just vanished by the time being, and now it's just gone. Like they've been trying to.
It was never there.
Yeah.
They gave it up. As soon as you gave up the nationality, you gave up all your rights. And by other means or title, whatever, shall be the full property of their masters, and the children of said slaves, their fathers and mothers, their kindred and other relations, either free or slave, shall have no pretensions or claims thereto, either through testamentary dispositions, that's my dad knows his stuff, or donations, my dad put it in his will to me, which dispositions and donations we declare null and void, and also whatever promises they may have made, or whatever obligations they may have subscribed to, as having been entered into by persons incapable of disposing of anything, and of participating to any contract. So again, when you read Indian title, they tell you, you can't pass this down. When you read the Joint Memorandum of Understanding of 1978 between the Narragansett so-called Indians and the state of Rhode Island, they say you abandon all claims whatsoever, possessory, monetary, inheritance. You abandon it. Christian Black Code, what's the difference? And then these lion-ass Indians will say, well, no, those are the other Indians. We didn't sell out. But you abandon your nationality by calling yourself Indian, so this applies automatically. Because the first issue of holding status, what determines your status? Your nationality. "23. Masters shall be responsible for what their slaves have done by their command, and also for what transactions they have permitted their slaves to do in their shops, in the particular line of commerce with which they were entrusted. And in case said slave should have acted without the order or authorization of their masters, said master shall be responsible only for so much as has turned to their profit. And if said masters have not profited by the doing or transaction of their slaves, the peculium which the masters have permitted the slaves to own shall be subjected to all claims against said slave, after deduction made by the masters of what they may do, what may be due to them. And if said peculium should consist in whole or in part of merchandise in which the slaves have permission to traffic, The master shall only come in for their share in common with other creditors. 24. Slaves shall be incapable of all public functions. Which part? The whole thing? It says, if said peculium shall consist in whole or in part of merchandise in which the slaves have permission to traffic, the master shall only come in for their share in common with the other creditors.
So that means that the way that we're able to get off slavery becomes.
No, it's saying if there's a slave doing business, you don't know about it, they're selling bootleg stuff, since they don't have permission to do anything, whoever's getting a piece of the cut, you get a piece too. Slaves shall be incapable of all public functions, being constituted agents for any other person other than their own masters, with powers to manage or conduct any kind of trade. Nor can they serve as arbitrators or experts. Nor shall they be called to give their testimony either in civil or in criminal cases, except when it shall be a matter of necessity, and only in default of white people. But in no case shall they be permitted to serve as witnesses either for or against their masters. Every time you want to sue your job for firing you, they put a what on you? Attorney. Then when you read the federal case Peoples, Peeples, versus the city of Detroit, 344, there was 11 so-called minority firefighters, blacks, who tried to sue for being fired. And they said only the person claiming discrimination against national origin had a right to sue. Everyone else who claimed that they were black and claimed discrimination against their race, you have no right to sue. "25. Slaves shall never be parties to civil suits, either as plaintiffs or defendants, unless you get what? An attorney to speak for you. Nor shall they be allowed to appear as complainants in criminal cases, but their master shall have the right to act for them in civil matters and in criminal ones. Attorneys to demand punishment and reparation for such outrages and excesses as their slaves may have suffered from." Attorneys. Slaves may be prosecuted criminally without their masters being made parties to the trial. So every time an attorney is so-called speaking for you, they're not a party to it. You're the one doing the time, not them. But in a civil issue, they make sure you get paid so they get paid. And even if you don't get paid, you still paying them. Any questions on that? Great.
That's right.
Yeah.
The definition should be here. A household allowance. So if you say allowance. So we'll go to French jail. Old French liberty. Allowance. You get involved clothing, provisions, food, everything.
So again, slaves may be prosecuted criminally without their masters being made parties to the trial, except they should be indicted as accomplices. And such slaves shall be tried at first by the judges of ordinary jurisdiction, if there be any, and on appeal by the superior council, with the same rules, formalities, and proceedings observed for free persons, save the exceptions mentioned hereafter. The slaves who, having struck his master, his mistress, or the husband of his mistress, or their children, shall have produced a bruise or the shedding of blood in the face, shall suffer capital punishment. And throughout history, what they often say so-called black people were doing to so-called white women. And they would just get hung. Christian black codes. Right now, presently, there was a documentary on Netflix where a so-called black person raped a so-called white woman, and he did life, and he didn't even do it.
That was a big book. To Kill a Mockingbird. Back in the day.
Yeah. They made us read that in high school.
Yeah.
Christian black codes. With regard to outrages or acts of violence committed by slaves against free persons, it is our will that they be punished with severity, even with death, should the case require it. Now, when I first read this, it used to make me mad, because I was associating myself with black and Negro. But if you don't associate yourself with this, it only applies to those who agree. Right? Yes.
Somebody has a question online. Can you sue someone for injuring you as a non-degear in X relation to when you became a Moor?
No. Because you do your name correction papers, you said how to identify it as. So you can't sue as a non-degear. You have to sue as yourself. So you can still sue them for injuring you, but you can't sue them for injuring you as their property. Because if I cut my shoes, can they sue me? Are my shoes my property? Huh? That water in? Oh yeah. But they can't sue me. So if you claim to be a non-degear, you claim to be someone's property, can you sue them? No. Yeah, which they won't. Because they just said blacks can't sue.
Question?
No, I was just gonna say,
I know, come
I was
on.
gonna say,
We're all learning here.
like, even though they're slaves, if they break, like, it's a common law for people, like, if your master did something wrong, like, what
Yeah,
could the master
that was
do
injured.
wrong?
That was injured. So if that was in there,
Slaves
if a
have
slave,
rights, right?
only certain rights.
Correct.
If the slave complains, then the master can be liable. But why would you want to sue as a slave? Sue as a free person, a free Moor. Because remember, there's no difference between a free black and a black slave. Because these laws still apply to both. So be free as a Moor, which when you study the Senator Free Moors petition of 1790, they were saying the Negro laws don't apply to us. And then the representative of South Carolina agreed. Yeah, you're not Negroes and blacks. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So sue as a Moor. But you have to be competent in order to do that. You can't just say, well, I'm a Moor, and then they just sprinkle rights on it. They can't. You have to know what your rights are. You have to know what they are, and then command them. I just go in this courtroom with a bunch of vultures and say, I'm a Moor, and you expect them to sprinkle well, here's all your rights. So blah, blah, blah. That's how it works. You either have your rights, meaning you know them, or you don't, which is latches. Yeah. So again, if you fail to make a claim on your rights, it's as if they're abandoned. So if we fail to go to City Hall and say, give us finances because you owe us, we abandon that. If we fail to elect someone because we're waiting for someone else to do it, then we're abandoning our right to suffrage, which is the right to vote. So all of our inactions are abandonments. Meaning no one's at fault but us. Because our will isn't matching what we desire to happen.
Right. That's why when you go to court, you don't have to write all your assets and what you get.
Yeah, no,
all the stuff because
it's right to privacy.
Because they want to control the non-degear.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. They want to have control over because you abandon it. The state. That's what it is.
So thefts of importance, and even the stealing of horses, mares, mules, oxen, or cows, when executed by slaves or manumitted persons, shall make the offender liable to corporal, and even to capital punishment according to the circumstances of the case. The stealing of sheep, goats, hogs, poultry, grain, fodder, peas, beans, or other vegetable produce or provisions when committed by slaves shall be punished according to the circumstances of the case. And the judges may sentence them, if necessary, to be whipped by the public executioner and branded with the mark of the flower de luce. In cases of thefts committed or damages done by their slaves, masters, besides the corporal punishment inflicted on their slaves, shall be bound to make amends for the injuries resulting from the actions of said slaves, unless they prefer abandoning them to the sufferer. They shall be bound so to make their choice in 3 days from the time of the conviction of the Negroes. If not, this privilege shall be forever forfeited. Abandonment. So again, if they abandon their claim, then it's forfeited. So in court, if these Europeans make a decision that you don't like and you don't make an appeal, you abandon your right to appeal. They're not going to make the appeal for you. That's the confidence. The runaway slave who shall continue to be so far for 1 month from the day of his being denounced to the officers of justice shall have his ears cut off and shall be branded with a flower de luce on the shoulder. And on a second offense of the same nature, persisted in during 1 month from the day of his being denounced, he shall be hamstrung and be marked with the flower de luce on the other shoulder. On the third offense, he shall suffer death. So, instead of death, you got 3 strikes and then you're in jail for the rest of your life. Notice the 3 strikes, right? And then you just go to prison for the rest of your life and you're just relabeled. That's everywhere. That 3 strikes thing is everywhere.
But,
No personal stuff.
yeah.
So most of our family, we got family members on that. They're on their second thing is they do something else around. Slaves who shall have made themselves liable to the penalty of the whip, the flower de luce brand, and ear cutting shall be tried in the last resort by the ordinary judges of the inferior courts, and shall undergo the sentence passed upon them without them being on appeal to the superior council in confirmation or reversal of judgment, notwithstanding Article 26 of the present code, which shall be applicable only to those judgments in which the slave convicted is sentenced to be hamstrung or for death. 34. Freed or freeborn Negroes shall have offered refuge in the houses of to fugitive slaves, shall be sentenced to pay to the masters of said slaves the sum of 30 livres a day for every day during which they shall have concealed said fugitives, and all other free persons guilty of the same offense shall pay a fine of 10 livres a day as aforesaid. And should the free or freeborn Negroes not be liable to pay the fine herein specified, they shall be reduced to the condition of slaves and be sold as such. Should the price of the sale exceed the sum mentioned in the judgment, surplus shall be delivered to the hospital. We permit our subjects in this colony who may have slaves concealed in any place whatever, to have them sought after by such persons and in such a way as they may deem proper, or to proceed themselves to such researches as they may think best. The slave who is sentenced to suffer death on the denunciation of his master shall, when that master is not accomplice to his crime, be appraised before his execution by 2 of the principal inhabitants of the locality, who shall be especially appointed by the judge, and the amount of aforesaid appraisement shall be paid to the master. To raise the sum, a proportional tax shall be laid on every slave, and shall be collected by the person invested with the authority. We forbid all the officers of the Superior Council and all other officers of justice in this colony to take any fees or receive any prerequisites in criminal suits against slaves, under the penalty in doing so of being dealt with as guilty of extortion. We also forbid all of our subjects of the colony, whatever their condition or rank may be, to apply on their own private authority the rack of their slaves under any pretense whatever, and to mutilate said slaves in any of their limbs or in any part of their bodies under the penalty of confiscation of said slaves. And said master so offending shall be liable to a criminal prosecution. We only permit masters when they think that the case requires it to put their slaves in irons and to have them whipped with rods or ropes. So all these cops killing our people on the streets, Christian black robes. We command our officers of justice in this colony. It wasn't Rhode Island colony, right? All these European states were colonies, right? So is this? When did they declare that this was? When did they declare that this was unlawful? When did they do that? We command our officers of justice in this colony to institute criminal proceedings against masters and overseers who shall have killed or mutilated their slaves when in the power and under their supervision, and to punish said murderer according to the atrocity of his circumstances, and in cases the offense shall be a pardonable one, Excuse me, and in cases the offense shall be a pardonable one, we permit them to pardon said masters and overseers without it being necessary to obtain from us letters and of pardon. And what they do to these so-called cops, they give them what? Paid time off.
Vacation.
Christian black codes.
I don't send them to jail.
Did that say that they were going to go to jail? No. They just told you.
That's what they did to this guy that he murdered that woman and mother buried, and he didn't charge him with manslaughter or anything. He said he got paid a leave. I'm like, what's going on with this?
All right, I'm not going to read anymore.
What site did you go to?
Just Google Christian black codes.
I already have it.
I don't have the site written down.
I dropped the link in the chat.
Now, I would like to read a little bit of the Willie Lynch letter, because people have to stop thinking that this is white supremacy. This is planned. They know what they're doing. Nothing has changed. They still call you black. And just to get a little more history, when you research Abraham Lincoln before he became the president of the United States, he was a lawyer, and he represented a William Dungy, who was a Moor. He basically pled to the courts that he was not a Negro but a Moor, which meant that the Christian black codes didn't apply to him. In short, the Moor won the case, and he got like $300 as remedy. Abraham Lincoln fighting for the abolishment of slavery in the colonies was part of the 13th Amendment, with its 20 sections, whereas Section 12 states that Africans shall not be citizens of the United States, which just supports the decision of the Dred Scott case. They're not citizens. The European Inquisitionists then hid the 20 sections and just implemented 2. They then assassinated Abraham Lincoln, put him on the copper penny, look at your skin tone. Put Abraham Lincoln on the copper penny facing the other way, then created the fake 14th Amendment, which is dealing with the Civil Rights Actors do what? Act, which means what? Not real. The Civil Rights Act of 1865, which afforded or awarded privileges to so-called blacks. Hence the 14th Amendment, which says all persons born in the United States, 2 types of persons, natural and artificial, right? Born in law does not mean begotten. The United States is a corporation. So all artificial persons created or recorded within the United States shall have privileges. 14th Amendment, yes.
I just want to add on the Naturalization Act.
Yeah, act. So, right? So they try to say the 14th Amendment reversed the decision of the Dred Scott case. Then they try to say the 15th Amendment made it so blacks can vote. Because if you're not a citizen, you can't vote. Right? Right? So now, because our people think that all of this stuff is real, but it's not. So we're going to go to the congressional record. Oh, it's right here up top. We'll have the youngster read it. I'm just put this in rotation so you'll see that it's real. See the seal from Congress, from Library of Congress. 3-dimensional, it's a real thing. See the wet ink signature? See how this blue which represents that this is not a copy, it's an original? If it was black, that would mean it was a copy. See that? This is the proceedings and debates of the 90th Congress, first session, volume 113, part 12, June 12, 1967 to June 20th, 1967. But they told you that it was past 1865 or 1868. But this is June 1967. So you, sir, what's that say right there?
Again, that's what I was saying.
Congressional record, House of Representatives, right? Let's say the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. The purported 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is and should be held ineffective and valid, null, void, and unconstitutional for the following reasons. One, the joint resolution proposing said amendment was not submitted to or adopted by a constitutional Congress. Article 1, Section 3, and Article 5 of the Constitution. The joint resolution was not submitted to the President for his approval. Article 1, Section 7. The proposed 14th Amendment was rejected by more than 1/4 of all the states in the Union. And there were no
All the states then in the Union. Remember, it wasn't always 50 states.
and it was never ratified by 3/4 of all the states in the Union. Article 5.
Stop it. June 1967, which means blacks can't vote because so-called blacks aren't citizens, because so-called blacks aren't blacks. They're Moors. So how could they be citizens of the European colonies doing business on their land? Can't be. Because they're Europeans doing business on your land, right? So imagine this. What if we all go to China, right? That would be a Moorish colony. Can the Chinese people then be citizens of our stuff? No, it's their land. You see the reason why they had to make us think it's not our land? Right? Then when they came here, Roger Williams, 1636, branded the land Providence. To get what? Remember, the status, jurisdiction, and adjudication. Jurisdiction consists of what? Personam, subject matter, and territorial. So now if you say, I'm from Providence, you claim to be from a European colony, which means Europeans have jurisdiction over you. That's how they begin to gain jurisdiction over our people. You see how that works? It's not them just being mean and them not liking us. There's legal reasons why they're doing what they're doing. Right, so now you know from the congressional record you're not a citizen of their BS.
You got school, the school teaches about the states.
Of course.
You know what I mean? They're supposed to like.
Right. So, in this, you'll hear them talking about the perpetual orbital plane of us just being in common. And as I'm reading it, think about how when we see the so-called black leaders, as an example, there was one trying to run for mayor here, and he expressed how he teaches about the importance of the 14th Amendment. But I just showed you it's not constitutional. So that would be them putting us on that orbital or that perpetual plane of us just lying to our own people. Okay? Same thing with Indians. No difference. So this is the Willie Lynch letter. So Willie Lynch is a European that came from Europe to the United States colonies. After they were perfecting their Spanish Inquisition against us there, they created manuals on how to deal with rebellious Moors. So they took him on, they put him on a ship, sent him here to teach the so-called slave masters here how to deal with us. Right? So this is December 25th, 1712. It says, "Gentlemen, I greet you on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord, 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, 1607, King James I, Sultan of Morocco. I'm not saying King James I was a Sultan of Morocco, I'm saying King James I was treating with the Sultan of Morocco. And the Sultan of Morocco allowed them to have free colonies and do commerce within Moorish dominions. Look it up. And what's the first thing that happened? 1607, Virginia, the first European colony. For bringing me here. I'm here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on the modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for controlling slaves. Ancient Romans would envy the use of my programs as it's implemented. As our boat sailed on the James River, named after our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. What's the difference? I caught the whip of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. You know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I'm not here to enumerate your problems. I'm here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method of controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if instilled correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. So from that date, that would be 2012. So he said in 1712 that these tools will keep them as slaves for 300 years, 2012. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseers can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves and make the differences bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control. The methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it's there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There's intelligence, size, sex, size of plantations, and status on plantations. Attitudes of power, whether the slaves live in the valley or on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now, what do we see today? South side of Providence don't like the West End because where they live, Willie Lynch. Light skin, dark skin, team light skin, team dark skin, Willie Lynch. Well, you're fat, Willie Lynch. Well, you're too skinny, Willie Lynch. Well, your hair short, Willie Lynch. Well, you got weed, Willie Lynch. Oh, I'm an Aborigine Indian, Willie Lynch. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. So again, distrust is stronger than trust, envy stronger than adulation, and respect or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black males versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves. Put the light-skinned slaves in the house. 1712.
No, but this is also a revelation.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my-
They're Christians. King James Version.
It's the same thing. It's not a new thing. It's the same word.
You must use the female versus the male and the male versus the female. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. It is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on you. Section 8. You hire them willingly as attorneys, trusting that they're going to do something for our benefit. You so-called vote for them. You go to their jobs and they say, "Let me see your social." We just put it all in. They must love, respect, and trust only us. That's why in the movies, as an example, the Avengers, so-called Captain America, is pale-skinned European. They're always putting him as if he's the greatest on the planet. He's a great guy.
He's like the weakest one. I'm like, that's so
They always paint the Europeans as the best. In the movie, what's that movie? Basically, all the action movies, the European guy knows all the karate in the world, beating up everybody. That's part of the indoctrination.
No, you know what's funny? Karate Kid. All these children that grew up learning these martial arts, but then the European comes in, the European kid, and he beat everybody that's been doing this for years, and it's their culture.
What'd you say?
In Rockland,
What's the war?
Mhm.
And then in the Avengers, the newest one, no spoilers, they say Captain America, the European, has America's ass. Because they talk about him in the suit and how his ass looks great. They made it a joke to say, "Oh, he has America's ass."
Spoiler alert, bruh.
I know, I ruined the whole movie. You can't watch it. No, but that's how they do it. You know what I'm saying? All right, Captain Marvel? Yeah.
Yeah.
She came to save the world.
Yeah, they do.
And you know what's funny?
The European woman.
The only difference. I just don't understand how that storyline works. And if anybody who's watched the movie, the only difference between her and the Asiatic pilot was she happened to get to the plane first. In Captain Marvel. But the weakest, the most damsel in distress. No, that happened to the damsel in distress of the world. The damsel in distress of the world, they made the hero. Like this is the face of, oh, I need help. This is not fair. Me. And you made them the hero of the entire Marvel? Come on. That she's supposed to be the most powerful.
Gentlemen, these kids are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful of each other. He says Negro. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's make a slave. It was the interest and business of slaveholders to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view of practical results. I and many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but with men, mind. In every regard they had for their own safety and prosperity, they needed to know the material on which they were to work. Conscious or conscientious of the injustice and wrong they were every hour perpetrating and knowing that they themselves would do. Were they the victims of such wrongs? They were constantly looking for the first sight of the dreaded retribution. They watched, therefore, with skilled and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and hearts of the slave. Through his sable face, unusual sobriety, apparent abstractions, solaceness, and indifference indeed, any move out of the common was afforded ground for suspicious inquiry. Let us make a slave. What do we need? First of all, we need a black nigger man, a pregnant nigger woman, and her baby nigger boy. Second, we'll use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. What we do with horses is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature. Whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring, we break that natural string of independence from them, thereby creating a dependency status so that we may be able to get from them useful production for our businesses and pleasure. Cardinal principles of making a Negro. From fear that our future generations may not understand the principles of breaking both of the beasts together, the nigger and the horse, we understand that short-range planning economics results in periodic economic chaos. So that to avoid turmoil in the economy, it requires us to have breadth and depth and long-range comprehensive planning, articulating both skill, sharp precision. We lay down the following principles for long-range comprehensive economic planning. Both horse and nigger is no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Both must be broken and tied together for ordinary production. For orderly future, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and young offspring. Hence, that's why they put all of our mothers in the ghettos, make sure all the fathers aren't there, and they do house inspections to make sure it's cleanly, when really they're making sure the male figure is not there, because that restores natural balance. So they have to make the mother dependent on the so-called state.
They want her to be dependent on the state.
Yes, which is exactly what they just said. They just said that. No coincidence. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a peculiar new language. Psychological and physical instruction of containment must be created for both. We hold the 6 cardinal principles as truth to be self-evident. Based upon the following, the discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and the nigger together, all inclusive of the 6 principles laid down above. Note, neither principle alone will suffice for good economics. All principles must be employed for orderly good of the nation. Accordingly, both a wild horse and a wild nigger is dangerous even if captured, for they will have the tendency to seek their customary freedom, and in doing so, might kill you in your sleep. You cannot rest. They sleep while you're awake and are awake while you sleep. They are dangerous near the family house, and it requires too much labor to watch them from the house. Above all, you cannot get them to work in this natural state. Hence, both the horse and the nigger must be broken, and that is breaking them from one form of mental life to another. Keep the body, take the mind. In other words, break the will to resist. That's when they make us complacent. They make it so, pay $2 to live on Section 8 for the rest of your life, and you live with your feet up, and you never fight the system. Take away their history, they don't know anything, they have no will to take. They don't know that they ran the planet. All they want something that they don't know that they had. Keep their feet up, keep them complacent. Now the breaking process is the same for both the horse and the nigger, huh?
And they think the Democrats giving them some kind of reparations by giving them affordable housing.
No, it's Willie Lynch. So Kanye West was right. Slavery is a choice.
Yeah, like when he said
That's
that,
why
I'm
people respond so
negative to it.
Because they don't know anything.
That's how they respond to the truth.
Because now the responsibility is on them. Like, oh, I was willingly being a slave instead of just pointing at the European. Oh, my master did it. My master made me do it. My master told me to do it.
All the private ones.
Yeah.
Right.
He told you distrust is more powerful than trust. Envy is more powerful than ambition. He told you. That lower self, target their lower self. Right? Now breaking the process is the same for both the horse and the nigger. Only slightly varying in degrees, being the principle is the same. But as we said before, there is an art in long-range economic planning. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring. It's the second time they said that. Of the horse and the nigger. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Yeah. You must keep your eyes and thoughts on the female offspring of the horse and the nigger. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Therefore, is the third time they mentioned the mother. If you break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development. And when the offspring is old enough to work, she will deliver it to you. For her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. And what does she do? Go get the summer job. This is how you fill out their applications. Go to their school. Get their license. For example, take the case of a wild stud horse, a female horse and an already infant horse, and compare the breaking process with two captured nigger males in their natural state, a pregnant nigger woman with her infant offspring. Take the stud horse, break him for limited containment. Completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her in her comfort. Breed the male and the stud until you have the desired offspring. Then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will in turn train the infant horse to eat out of your hand also. When it comes to breaking the uncivilized nigger, use the same process. Will vary the degree and step up the pressure as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest and most restless nigger. Strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male niggers, the female and the nigger infant. Tar and feather him, tie each leg to a different horse facing opposite directions. Set him afire and beat both horses to pull him apart in front of the remaining niggers. The next step was to take a bullwhip and beat the remaining nigger male to the point of death in front of the female and infant. Don't kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for future breedings. The breaking process of the African woman, so this is the fourth time they mentioned the woman. The breaking process of the African woman, take the female and run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desire willingly. Test her in every way, because she is the most important factor for good economics. Because the woman is God. She creates the rest of the slaves. The workforce, exactly. That's in red. All those ones I mentioned, the female, are in red. Well, I did that in the book so that you know the attack was against the woman. And they told you they're going to breed the women with different men to make different offspring for different purposes. If she shows any sign of resistance in submitting completely to your will, do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her to extract the last bit of resistance out of her. Take care not to kill her, for in doing so, you spoil good economics. When in complete submission, she will train her offspring in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age. Understanding is the best thing. Therefore, we shall go deeper into this area of the subject matter concerning what we have produced here in the breaking process of the female nigger. We have reversed the relationship in her natural uncivilized state. She would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized nigger male. Now, don't get emotional about the word nigger. Listen to what they're saying, the principles that they're using. Because if we know the principles, we use the principles, reverse it, and use it for our prosperity. Right? And she would have a limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring and would raise male offspring to be dependent like her. Nature has provided for this type of balance. I'll never do that again. We have reversed the relationship in her natural uncivilized state. She would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized nigger male, and she would have a limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring, and would raise male offspring to be dependent like her. That's what they want. All these lazy ass men.
Can I say something? Yeah. In that description, just to show the mindset of the descriptions, what they were referring to as uncivilized natural or actual nobles.
They're talking about free,
nobles
yeah.
of the land. Yeah. The lawmakers, the people who gave them permission, but look how they speak of them in here as the opposite. Yeah. So
and they told you they're trying to reverse.
Even though you're hearing them describe them as savages, but he's talking about the nobles.
Yeah. That's why I said again, don't get emotional about the word nigger and uncivilized. Don't get emotional about that. They're trying to get you into your lower self, which is exactly what they want. Nature had provided for this type of balance, so we have to get back to nature. Because they reverse nature by burning and pulling a civilized nigger apart, bullwhipping the other to the point of death, all in her presence. So all this stuff, them choking our people out on the street, Willie Lynch. They're sending our men to jail, letting them get raped, Willie Lynch. To take the strongest out of us, break them down so that we have the fear of the European, because we don't want that to happen to us. Chances are, if you see a big dude get his ass whooped, you ain't going to fight the person that is poking you. You know what I'm saying? But have no fear, these Europeans ain't ish. By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. I'm an independent black woman. I'm a strong independent black woman. I don't need no man because you got the European state. You pay $2 for Section 8. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reversed roles. For fear the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak, independent, but physically strong. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offspring to be psychologically independent. What have you got? You've got the nigger woman out front and the nigger man behind, scared.
Right.
You got the nigger woman out front and the nigger male behind, scared. This is a perfect situation of sound sleep economics. Before the breaking process, we had to be alertly on guard at all times. It's very difficult to read after reading something. Now we can sleep soundly. For out of frozen fear, His woman stands guard for us. He cannot get past our early slave molding processes. He is a good tool, now ready to be tied to the horse at a tender age. By the time a nigger boy reaches the age of 16, he is soundly broken in and ready for a long life of sound and efficient work in the reproduction of a unit of good labor force, which we all got family members with multiple baby daddies, right? Or we got a family member who got multiple baby moms, and they take care of none of the children. Willie Lynch. Continually through the breaking of uncivilized savage niggers, by throwing the nigger male savage into a frozen psychological state of independence, by killing of the protective male image, and by creating a submissive dependent mind of the nigger male slave, they have created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever. Unless a phenomenon occurs and reshifts that position of the male and female slaves, we show what we mean by example. Take the case of the two economic slave units and examine them closely. The nigger marriage. We breed two nigger males with two nigger females. Then we take the nigger males away from them and keep them moving and working. Say one nigger female bears a nigger female, and the other bears a nigger male. Both nigger females being without influence of the nigger male image, frozen with an independent psychology, will raise their offspring into reverse positions. So since there's no balance in nature, it's going to be imbalanced. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her, through her, by her, we negotiate her at will. The one with the nigger male offspring, she being frozen with the subconscious fear of his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, or physically strong. In other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these two offsprings become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them and continue the cycle. This is good, sound, and long-range comprehensive planning. Keep them in the ghetto. Have them mating with each other. It keeps the stupidity. Because if the parents don't know, the children ain't gonna know. Warning: possible interloping negates earlier. We talked about the non-economic good of the horse and the nigger into their wild or natural state. We talked about the principle of breaking and tying them together for orderly production. Furthermore, we talked about paying particular attention to the female savage and her offspring for early future planning. Then more recently, we stated that by reversing the positions of the male and female savages, we created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever unless a phenomenon occurred, a prophet comes, and reshifts the positions of the male and female savages. Our experts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring, where they say that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time. That's Allah, the mind. If I can touch some substantial original historic bases, and they advised us that the best way to deal with this phenomenon is to shave off the brute's mental history, shave off their mental history, and create a multiplicity of phenomena of illusions, so that each illusion will twirl on its own orbit, something similar to a floating ball in a vacuum. Tell them lies about history. Some of y'all are Indian, some of y'all are black. The blacks were shipped over here because the millions of Indians were killed. So now you answer your own questions. It's a lie. This creation of multiplicity of phenomena of illusions entails the principle of crossbreeding the nigger and the horse, as we stated above. the purpose of which is to create a diversified division of labor, thereby creating different levels of labor and different values of illusion at each connecting level of labor. We all know Moors who are mixed with Europeans who are just all confused. I don't know which one I am. Confused. We all know so-called African Americans, so-called Indians mixed. They're confused. I don't know. They're black. I don't know. This creation, the result of which is a severance of the points of original beginnings for each sphere illusion. Since we feel that the subject matter may get more complicated as we proceed in laying down our economic plan concerning the purpose, reason, and effect of crossbreeding horse and nigger, we shall lay down the following definition terms for future generations. Orbiting cycle means a thing turning in a given path. Axis means upon which or around which a body turns. Phenomenon means something beyond ordinary conception and inspires awe and wonder. Multiplicity means a great number. Sphere means a globe. Crossbreeding a horse means taking a horse and breeding it with an ass, and you get a dumb, backward-ass, long-headed mule that is not reproductive nor productive by itself. So take the original man, breed it with something inferior, and you got something just effed up. And keep doing that. Crossbreeding niggers means taking so many drops of good white blood and putting them into as many nigger women as possible, varying the drops by various tone that you want, and then letting them breed with each other until another cycle of colors appears as you desire. What this means is this: put the niggers and the horse in a breeding pot. The projects, the reservations, the ghettos. Mix some asses and some good white blood, and what do you get? You get a multiplicity of colors of ass backward, unusual niggers, running, tied to a backward ass, long-headed mule, the one productive of itself, the other sterile. The one constant, the other dying. We keep the nigger constant, for we may replace the mules for another tool. Both mule and nigger tied to each other, neither knowing where the other came from, and neither productive for itself, nor without each other. Control the language. Crossbreeding completed. For further severance from their original being, we must completely annihilate the mother tongue. The mother tongue is etymology. The root of the word is its mother. The Tower of Babel. Of both the new nigger and the new mule, and institute a new language that involves the new life's work of both. You know, language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he's able to move through all levels of that society. What did Roger Williams do? He wrote a book on our language and said it was similar to the Hebrew. And what did he do? He caused division amongst the Narragansett Moors, and the Europeans took over. Then he said in his book, the Gentiles shall know my name. Roger Williams Park, Roger Williams Housing, Roger Williams Hospital, Roger Williams University, Roger Williams Middle School, elementary school, college. That's a housing rate, right? Roger Williams Park. And what is that?
Yeah,
Us.
How are you a Gentile?
Because
Just
tell you why.
Oh, right, okay, I just want to make sure.
Gentile is one who is not a Christian. Not,
But if you go back to the Old Testament, it's really the Gentile is one who's not part of the Hebrew or not Abraham. So have
Remember, they just reversed.
Right, they just reversed it. So they are the Gentile. And even Hebrew is a name, I'll just say children of Abraham, but Hebrew, goes with But I can see from my research that connects the original African Egyptian man with the gold and everything else.
Right? So, therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets. And he is then no more a slave, for you can't fool him any longer. Meaning, once you know how to read and you know etymology, these people can't fool you no more. So whenever you see these so-called black leaders saying colored rights, you know what color means, you know he's an agent. You see the so-called European pasty Democrats saying, we stand for black people and black housing, you already know he's an agent. Inquisition, because you already know the language. You already know democracy is demon power or destruction power. What are they doing to our families? Destroying them. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops. And the slavery system would break down. Because it means joint ownership. If you said our, if I say get my pen, you're going to get my pen. If I say get our pen, you're going to know that's part of yours. And the slavery system would break, where he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So if you have to be careful in setting up the new language for the slave, the new language for the slaves would soon be in your house talking to you man to man, meaning don't teach them etymology. And that is death to our economic system. In addition, the definitions of words or terms are only a minute part of the minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. And then first the word's a word, right? A total society has many interconnected value systems. All the values in the society have bridges of language to connect them from ordinarily working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would sharply clash and cause internal strife or civil war. The degree of the conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. So we got a bunch of people saying we're Hebrews and more saying now we're Moors. If there's only 20 of us in this room and then 100 Hebrews saying we're Hebrews, numbers win. Now, I know, but they don't know what Hebrew means. Yeah, the numbers win. Exactly. That's this earth plane. So we can't just get stuck in our ourselves saying, well, yeah, we know this stuff. Nah, it's a numbers game. And they know this. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean. Meaning you wouldn't challenge him being in the ghetto, just fix that shit up sometimes. But he's still in the ghetto. Proud of it. I'm from this block. I'm from this hood. Proud of it. Clown, just put a basketball court in the back. Or the same hog pen and make a slip and incorporate something in his language whereby he becomes a horse more than he does his hog pen. You got a problem. He will soon be in your house. That's where it ends. So that's the Willie Lynch letter and the Christian Black codes that are in force, in effect, at play right now. How long have we been live?
2 hours.
All right. So let me just end it on the camera. If you want some of this inside exclusive knowledge, come to the temple, 23 Acorn Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 3rd floor, Suite 79. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for your continued support. I already know that this fight is a fight. It's not meant for the faint of heart. Stay strong, because we ain't stopping anytime soon. Peace.